Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mortgage Broker Builder Show with your host, John Jerkovich.
I got a pretty exciting show for you here today. We have a gentleman that I call him like a serial entrepreneur, even though he would maybe not label himself as that. He's a marketing octopus. He's got his tentacles in all kinds of things. And if you follow all the stuff he's doing on LinkedIn, and you spend the next 3 days just looking at the content he's put out, you will have the equivalent of a master's degree in marketing because there is so much stuff out there. So we're super excited to have him. And if you guys don't know kind of what our mission and our goal is, we have 3 real core tenets and principles that we kind of occupy here. And we like to say that we're in the B2B business. We help bankers become better. Once they become better, we help them become brokers. So we help bankers become brokers, and we also help brokers become better. And we have a real inherent belief that just because 50% of the world's average doesn't mean you need to be. So our goal is to help put you in that upper echelon. I can't guarantee that you'll be a 1% loan officer like all the spam emails that you get inside of your Facebook. However, I can tell you, we can help you do more business. And if you just lean in, apply some of the stuff we're talking about, you don't have to do it all. There is definitely additional things there. So knowledge is leverage. The more leverage you have, the more money you make. So Bill, welcome to the show. That's my whole intro there. I talk fast. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I appreciate it. You're way too kind, but yeah, this is fun stuff. We've been doing it for a while, so it's I'm excited to have this conversation.
Definitely. And Bill and I, we worked together back at the big red machine that is Rocket today. Back then it was Quicken Loans and Rock Financial. They were 2 separate companies. And Bill did a little equity program over there. And coming off the heels of, he knows whether there's aliens or not. I'm not going to ask him right now, but he was like counterespionage in the Air Force. Yeah. So he knows stuff about aliens and Area 51. And Joe Rogan would love to talk to him. He just won't share it. I know he's got the details. But Bill, if you could just kind of walk us through your career quickly, because you've done a lot of things in a lot of different verticals, channels, all around marketing and getting eyeballs on your stuff, people to talk to. So walk us through your career a little bit if you could.
Yeah, sure. So I usually start at the point that I entered the mortgage market. But since you brought up some other things and you dug deep, I'll go back a little bit deeper. So I started everything in the Air Force, came out of the Air Force Academy. My dream was to be an A-10 pilot. That was one of my earliest failures. I didn't quite get to that level. And so as a result, when I came out of pilot training, I had to kind of pick an alternative career field. I wanted to be a combat controller, but those guys were all booked up. So I ended up in this thing called OSI, Office of Special Investigations. And like you said, I went into the counterespionage business. And so there's a fine thread there that I was fascinated, and we did some of the early information warfare type stuff online. And so it was all about behaviors and patterns and all this sorts of things. And way back in the 90s, it was like internet was like an early thing. And we were trying to do the things that we did in counterintelligence and counterespionage operations online. And so I was really early to the online thing. And did that for the government, intel agencies, even after I got out of the Air Force for a while. And then I wanted to go to the commercial sector because at that time, it was post-Gulf War and we weren't ever going back to war again. And getting paid as a government contractor sucked. And the people on the commercial side were making all the money. So I wandered into this startup that was building an internet bank. And then that's where I entered the mortgage industry 20 some years ago in 2000. And probably because we were a bunch of dumb technology people, we did something really incredible that was never done. I used to say never done since. But now that the home equity market's coming back, Spring EQ and Figure are essentially doing what we did in 2000. And that was we did a 100% online unconditional approval for a HELOC and wired that initial draw within the span of about 2 minutes. And so like I said, we were a bunch of technology people that didn't know anything about mortgage and compliance and trying to sell the product and all that kind of stuff. So So that was an interesting experience. It satisfied my infinite curiosity, where I went from starting with security for the bank to marketing to actually selling the loans on Wall Street. And then ultimately selling the bank. I led the sale of the bank to private equity to Lightyear Capital. Quicken Loans did not win that deal. But I didn't like the private equity business plan, and I did like Dan Gilbert. So I cashed out on that and went over to Quicken Loans, and then ultimately left Quicken Loans after about a year and a half there, and started Kaleido initially as a technology, a lead management company. And so because of the mortgage meltdown, all my call centers went out of business. And so we pivoted into the marketing realm, and I became a mortgage marketing company or agency after that. And that's essentially what Kaleido has been for the last, well, since 2008 or so. And so that's kind of the short, long history of how I got to here.
Well, the interesting thing is, as you progress through life, right, the longer the lever you have, the more weight you can ultimately lift. And each time as you go through these little failures or different things that, setbacks, it wasn't the path you were on, you acquire skills and knowledge, you end up with a longer lever, and you can just take that lever and parlay it into the next thing. So Kaleido, for those of you, Kaleido builds websites, it's a full kind of ad agency. We use them with some of our clients that want very specific websites. It's different than kind of the ones out of the box where you get something, that's a flat fee. It's a generic template. They build custom websites for clients. They do a fantastic job. That's how Bill and I kind of started working together, was with websites and different things there. So super cool. And then you've got a lot of companies that you're also out, you work for, and you consult, not just in the mortgage space, but you do things across insurance, a lot of different verticals. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I mean, really, the core passion is really lead generation. I mean, that's my fascination. That's where I spent all my time. That's where I usually provide the most value. Kaleido, like you said, we used to be this little niche organization where we did turnkey consumer direct, kind of like Rocket does. Like, that's where I came from. That's what I understood. And we would build those, and everybody else in the mortgage world was all retail, right? COVID changed all that. So then Kaleido became sort of mainstream, where everybody, even retail operations, have to be some version of consumer direct. And then outside of that, again, a lot of the consulting work is that lead generation, even on the B2B side. So our fintech, SaaS people, the people that are offering technology, I mean, that's my background really, is technology. I love working with people that are providing technology into the mortgage space, because I think a lot of times mortgage gets the short end of the stick. There's a lot of innovation that our fintech folks can bring to us, but just isn't kind of presented as well or made simple enough. And so anyway, that's a fun side of some consulting stuff that I do.
Yeah. And if you don't follow Bill, so I would just give a little shout out here. Definitely check him out on like LinkedIn. There's just a massive amount of stuff that gets put out there every single day. He's got a big thing that was just out, and this is actually something that I want to talk about. A recent post of his had to do with, just generating consumer direct business as the little guy. Like, how do you go out there? How do you get started? And Bill also is affiliated with the company, My Perfect Leads. Is it My Perfect Leads or My Perfect Mortgage? I know you have both.
Yeah. So My Perfect Leads, hold on just a second.
Uh-oh. We lost him. Hey, Israel, how are you?
Good. Sorry, I had a little bit of a technical difficulty there, but everything's up
I
and
was
working.
I didn't know
can
where
hear
Bill
you
was
both
gonna.
loud and clear.
I
Awesome.
apologize. Of course, as things would have it, the dogs have to go crazy at the moment we're recording. So apologize for that little.
All the time. If things didn't go right.
Oh yeah. Anyway, to your point, yeah, they're so Kaleido's the agency. My Perfect Leads, and this kind of maybe dovetails into what we might talk about on the compliance side. It used to be our My Perfect Leads was our pay per lead platform. Of course, FTC has kind of changed the rules for that, and so now we're offering the ability for lenders to be featured on that platform in an exclusive way, and essentially sort of do marketing for them, much like you would buy positioning inside of a publication or something like that. And so that's changed for us a little bit. So.
And something that's really cool that, you have the generic lead companies out there. I would say, was probably, you guys were like, the stuff you had out there 2 years ago about DSCR loans, all that non-QM product. You guys had a ton of stuff. I think you were very cutting edge on being able to drive and deliver really good leads in that non-QM space. It wasn't like a byproduct. It was actually the product you were going for. And I think that's just the 20 plus years of mortgage knowledge. You were able to dial that in.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's always been our differentiator, even within the agency business, I think, is just kind of because we have been around so long and we've seen the cycles. And, I'm also owned, I've been a mortgage broker. I've owned a mortgage company. I've been an executive at larger companies. And so it makes it really easy for us to skate to where the puck's headed because we've already seen these things, right? So a lot of people are looking at what's happening right now and they're like, oh, this is a strange, crazy market. And there are some nuances to it that make it unique in some ways, but it is just part of a pretty typical pattern. And I love that. I love seeing the patterns and kind of seeing where things are headed. So we did that with our product offerings on those platforms. Like we were marketing for DSCR loans, way ahead of anybody else. Bank statement. I mean, we're marketing now for ARMs and for no doc loans. I mean, like all these things, home equity, we were way in front of home equity. We actually helped Spring EQ, and they were way, way early. We actually helped them launch the business model. And that was like almost 6 years ago. So that's how far in front of the home equity market that we kind of saw ourselves. So yeah, it's a huge advantage when you've seen the cycle before.
Yeah. And seeing it before, and just another word of advice for people, when you're going out and you're seeking help, if you can find people that have actually already done it, been there, they understand what you're doing, the price you pay matters very little if you don't get a result. And I like to say, people look at something like Ameritrade and, Ameritrade's going to pay me, I have to pay them 1.5% or whatever it is. I would pay Warren Buffett 25% because Warren Buffett, like, he wins. So there's a lot of value in being and working with somebody that's already done it, that understands the business maybe better than you. So if you do hire a consultant, you're hiring a marketing company and they're not giving you like 80% of what they're telling you is not something you're hearing for the first time, and it's not like very cutting edge, I would tell you to back up a little bit and maybe go and check somebody else out, or at least do some digging, because there are a lot of pretenders out there and it became easier than ever to become a pretender. So just the market does that. So My Perfect Lead is super cool. I know some people that have bought those leads and had great success with them, right? People got on the phone. So again, just a testament to that. So as we kind of move forward at some of the things that I wanted to touch on, and I think that you're very well versed in this. If you were the little guy, right, and you've owned your own company, you've done it. If you're the small guy and you're going out there in today's world, and I talk about building a portable personal brand where the name on the back of the jersey is more important than the name on the front, a lot of what you're talking about day in, day out is that very thing, maybe at a company level, but it applies all the way down because every loan officer is a CEO of a company of one.
Yep.
And where would you start? Like, what would be some things to generating leads if you're the small guy out there trying to compete in the big market?
Yeah, I think the number one mistake that I see a lot of folks make, and actually when I started my mortgage brokerage shop, I mean the same mistake, is as a loan officer, just kind of the nature of that career path. You probably were a loan officer inside a larger organization. They helped you get your licensing. As you're selling loans, you probably don't realize like how much support is around you in order to make you successful. And so when you go out, you try to recreate everything you had when you sat inside of Loan Depot or you sat inside of Rocket. And so what does that mean? From a marketing perspective, you start talking to agencies like myself. You try to do Google Ads, PPC, SEO, and that sort of thing, and you get over your skid. So one of the things whenever we talk to a customer, we want to understand exactly sort of where they are in their stage of becoming, building a brokerage. So what I always suggest is, one, start local. And so I always advocate more of a retail starting point, right? So start local, try to dominate your local community, do things, even if you're a consumer direct inside of a call center, like learn how to work like a retail broker early on, make those relationships, build that network, leverage your database first, because you probably have a database, of people that you've done work with before. Um, Even if you're just taking your database, and one of the classic things I know we used to do way back in the day is you get a new loan officer, you're like, write down 150 people that you know and stick
Yep.
them in your database. And you don't even have to sell them a loan. You just have to tell them that, hey, I'm a loan officer now. This is what I do. And you'll get business out of that. So start really local. And then I show this little Venn diagram because ultimately what brings you the most leads 2 years out won't be those things. It'll be SEO, it'll be PPC probably, because you'll start to get that leverage. And these early on things that you do are not scalable, but as we always say in the technology world, in the kind of the entrepreneurial world, always do things that don't scale first. And so start with that email database. And then as you want to extend out in that domination of your community, do social media, get out there with video, do a little bit of that. And then once you've got enough leverage, you got some cash flowing, that's when you get into talking to an agency like mine or doing SEO or doing PPC and those sorts of things. But don't start there. Don't hire a bunch of loan officers. Don't buy a bunch of leads. Start really local. Build yourself a little bit of a foundation. And like you said, leverage point. So small. What you do when you're small is totally different from what you do when you're big. But start there.
Yeah, it's super important. And as I work with people, one of the things when we launch a new broker, one of our first steps is we come up with a 90-day marketing plan.
Yeah.
And it's why 90 days? Why not like my first 12 months? Because when you get to 90 days, you have no idea where you're going to be and the plan will change. You can map it out. It makes people feel good to map out a 3-year marketing plan, but it does you absolutely no good in that it becomes irrelevant after day 60. And then people also always want to try and do 22 things at once. And right, we've got time, money, and knowledge. And as a new person, you probably lack all of them.
Right.
So, right, you've got to execute on something. So I think that's just a great starting point. And then talk to me a little bit about, I know you talk a lot about as you do begin those things, just having a good basic foundation. And I know you've told me multiple horror stories. I have a bunch of them that people that have come to me with, they went to GoDaddy, they got their domain, they're ready to conquer the world. All of a sudden their email box fills up with people that are going to build them this great site. And then it's 3 months later, they're $3 to $5 grand in the hole and they have a site that sucks.
Yeah.
Share and you can't even really begin to market on it. Can you just kind of share? I know you've got dozens, if not hundreds of those stories. Can you just talk about that a little bit? Like just some basic fundamentals that you would want your website to do as you go out and begin marketing? Because it is one of the key things that you should have up in place before you really do anything else.
Yeah. That's a great starting point. So if you're going to start your own mortgage broker or even as a loan officer, there's two things. Even if you're a loan officer under a larger brand, I think that there are two things. Your first two purchases are your CRM and your website. And we can talk about the CRM in a second. We kind of alluded to that, but the website itself, the saddest story I hear, and you said, 5, 6, I mean, some of these people spend like 20 grand, 30 grand. We build custom websites for 30 grand. That's really not necessary at a lot of levels. Even, if you're a broker and you've got like 10 loan officers, you probably don't need a 30 grand website. There's a lot of places to get a website in the mortgage market for a couple $100 a month. And usually that's essentially renting, or as I call, lease to own. So there's some things you want to look for in that. But don't spend a ton of, you want to maximize, you want to have as much of your marketing budget as possible to go out to the market, but you do need that foundation. So you need a good website. You don't want to waste your time trying to figure out HTML. I've seen people do that too. GoDaddy, HTML, site builders, Squarespace. There's a couple different good providers, including ourselves, that can build you a lead generating site which means a site that is optimized to essentially have a form that's a progressive form, survey style form that you see on all the lead providers. If you go to LendingTree, you can see what those forms look like. Don't use the traditional web form. Don't send them into your POS, right? It's that kind of step-by-step survey form. And again, you're probably looking in the range of a couple $100 a month to provide you that initial website and get you some initial branding there. Don't go to general agencies. Go to general web designers that don't understand mortgages or lead generation. Don't build it yourself on GoDaddy or Squarespace. And then be cautious of the provider that you go with. There's probably only a couple, to be honest. So the things you want to look for when you're buying that website, ultimately you want to own it. So there should be a path to you owning that. So, down to the code. And then the second thing that I think is really important is duplicate content, which is a little bit of an advanced SEO content. But anybody that tells you that they're going to give you free content every month is setting you up to be de-indexed from Google. So that's something that we see as a really big pain point. You think you're getting something valuable, they're giving you free content, but what they're doing, and sometimes I think even the web providers, because these are good companies and good people, don't even know what they're doing to their customers. If you're publishing that same article on multiple thousands even of sites that you provide cheaply, Google will start to see that same article over and over again, and they will take you out of the index, which essentially makes your website invisible. So again, undermining your lead generation. So one, don't spend too much. Two, go with somebody that understands mortgage lead generation. And then you got to have it. You say it all the time, personal portable brand. Like in this market, if you're going to be a loan officer, this is going to be a profession. That's one of your tools that you always want to own. You want to own your own database, and you want to own your own personal identity and brand.
Yeah, as things progress forward, right? I've got a son that's 21 years old, and I like to leverage him, like the way that he does things, right? He's just different. We were talking about a stock last night, and 15 minutes later, he came back and he had read their, K10, right? Like he had read all this stuff. He's super smart, but I look at the way he does things. I tell him something. He goes and looks at the social media. What is the company doing? Then he goes to their website. Like he's got this progression that he walks through. Yep. So if you skip that off there, if you can't find the website, like a lot of people, it can be a direct referral from a real estate agent. Hey, call Bill Rice. They can't find you anyplace out there on the interwebs. Well, maybe the name was wrong. I wrote it down wrong. I'm just going to continue on my way. So it is super important. And
well, that's huge. I tell people all the time, like so we hear this all the time, like, oh, I get all my business from referrals. Well, guess what the modern referral is? Nobody hands anybody a business card, and then that person looks at that business card and makes a phone call. That's not the way referrals happen. You're sitting at a soccer game or your daughter's volleyball game, and you're like, hey, I'm thinking about refinancing, or we're getting ready to buy our first home. Like, who did you use? Oh, John Jerkovich, my mortgage guy. And then they go on the website or they go on Google and they say John Jerkovich, mortgage broker. And if you don't come up, then the referral's gone. It's lost. And if you can't capture that, you're in trouble too, right? They want to fill out a form. They don't want to call you. People are busy. They like to control their time. They want to fill out a form. They want to schedule an appointment. They want to control that first meeting. And so that's critical. So when they find you, make sure that you can capture them too. But if you want to believe that you're a business fueled by referrals, which is great, you sure as heck better have a website, and you better be able to capture that visitor into a form.
Yeah, and anytime I hear that, I was like, oh, it doesn't matter in my business. And my immediate thing back is, you have any idea how much business you've lost that it did matter to, that just never made it to you?
Yep.
If 70% of people start their mortgage journey online,
yep.
Well, that means that you've lost potentially 70% of your business. So if you did close 100 loans last year, what was your potential? 300, 500? I don't know what it is, but I know that it's more.
Right.
So
right.
yeah, no, all great things there. And I really encourage people, spend a little bit of time on those things. And it's not going to hurt you. So we've got a good website now. And one other thing that I just add, that sometimes people run into problems on their websites, make sure that the company you work with has the ability to give you landing pages, additional forms, some stuff on the back end to where it's not just that generic web page. Because running a bunch of landing pages for specific things is really how you turn those likes on Facebook or Instagram. It's where you direct them to take that from a like to a lead. And it's one of the biggest areas that I see people failing at today. They've gotten pretty good. I like to say social media has 5 L's, right? You've got maybe 6. The first thing that your first L is when you start doing it, you feel like a loser. And beyond that, right? Because nobody likes and engages with your stuff. But beyond that, you need to get likes, laughs, and hopefully some learning. So those are your next 3 things: likes, laughs, and learning. That's what you're out there posting. With that, if you do it correctly and you're getting the likes, the laughs, and some learning, you can start to then begin to turn that into leads. And that's by directing them to, and we've mentioned CRM a few times, website, landing pages, but that's directing them to someplace for something of value. Download our list of, 10 key components every first-time home buyer needs. Down payment assistance programs in Minnesota, whatever it is, you direct them there. Then you capture the lead, name, phone number, email. If your website and everything works well, this is going to be a very smooth process and they're going to want to do it. And from there, you can write a loan. But you can't go from a post to a loan. There's all those progression in the middle. Just really make sure that when you're talking to anybody about a website and you ask them about a landing page, if they start telling you there's hundreds of dollars in custom integration fees and they should, this is what they do. This should be their area of expertise. So, and I know Bill's great with that, and they run, thousands of different landing pages across all of his different stuff. So we've got our website. What would be some other, right? It's very easy for me to go and, give LendingTree $5,000 a month to buy some leads, and who knows how I do there. What would be some other areas that you see right now are maybe neglected, underutilized, people aren't doing it? We've had some specials here. We did a thing with a guy that does every door direct mail. And we walk people through exactly how do you go back to old snail mail. And I think that dovetails into what's happening with the FCC and the TCPA, right? One-to-one consent. What are some things that you right now see as maybe low-lying fruit for a loan officer or somebody to go out and start getting business that's not what everybody else is doing?
Yeah, for sure. I think the first thing you look at is the market. I think a lot of times as much as we're in the market and we look at our economics and we're always watching mortgage rates and everything, sometimes we don't think about on a macro level what's actually happening out there. So when I'm looking for sources of leads, I'm looking for, okay, what is the need in the market? Home purchases are tough. There's no inventory. There's nothing for them to buy. So that's probably I'm not going to be able to do that, right? My refis are going to be tough, right? Because they're all locked in at really low rates. So what are some pockets? We know we have historically high levels of home equity, right? So people are sitting on just piles of equity. We know that credit cards, not only balances, but also interest rates are going through the roof. So that's debt that's sitting there. I know that that there are, again, real estate investors that are still active in the market and are looking to do things. So those are my pockets. So if I have, so then I'm going to say, okay, where are those leads at? So in my database are a bunch of people that I didn't have a product for before that have come into me for refinances, want to use it, maybe debt consolidation, maybe home improvement, maybe just wanted to do a cash out refinance. And this, hopefully you've done a good job in your database where you can see that segment. But now there are some pretty incredible home equity products that have gotten so simple that there's no reason to kind of push them off to banks and credit unions anymore, right? The technology solutions are there for like I said before, that we did at Deep Green, right? You can get instant approvals. You can get them done in a matter of days. They're better for the customer than a personal loan and some other products that are out there. So I would dive into my database for some of those past deals. I think in a related kind of note, so that's my age lead category. I have my own CRM. There's also places where you can acquire that data, right? So you do have to be careful with this. You don't want to go and acquire data from anybody that tells you that they're TCPA compliant, right? Because ultimately, wherever that data comes from, if you're buying age leads and those sorts of things, don't think of them as internet real-time consent leads. Think of them as true consumer data, and make sure that you're only doing marketing and sales that's allowable on consumer data, right? So you can pick up the phone and call anybody that you want, right? You can email pretty much anybody that you want. You can send direct mail to people that you have addresses for or whatever, but you can't assume that you have consent, right? So you don't want to use automation. You don't want to use dialers. You want to go like manual old school, right? You can integrate this data into your database, and you can, again, manually reach out to these people, just like you would if you were just cold calling all your neighbors, right? And those sorts of things. So be careful with that. I'm not your legal, I'm not your compliance officer, so you can kind of double check some of those things. But make sure that you're doing marketing things that are compliant. So stay out of the crosshairs of TCPA, which is literally, if you look at what that is, it's all around automation, right? It's all about dialing people that you don't know randomly in an automated way. So robo-dialing and all that stuff. So stay out of that. Do things small and non-scalable and manual, and reach out to these people. I love your everyday direct mail. I think direct mail is a great solution. So there's really nothing that precludes you from doing direct mail, and you can see the markets, right? You can see the neighborhoods, you can see the communities that have appreciating market values, that sort of thing. You can see and pull data in that shows you where the real estate investors are the most active. I know we did a piece of content that said, hey, what are the most attractive real estate investor markets? And you can look at those. You can look at where rental rates are high, where property values are strong, where income levels are strong. So you can do some of that. So I think there's some clever ways. Age leads and all the different contexts there. I think direct mail is super interesting. And then if you do have the budgets and the capability to do PPC and SEO and that sort of thing, if you talk into the market, there are millions of people inquiring every day about a mortgage. So we have we generate leads, and our volume of leads generated and the demand coming in is significant, right? We could support hundreds and hundreds of lenders. So if you have the capability to put budgets into that, you can get leads every single day. You can literally turn on that advertising and start getting leads for whatever. But one of the things, and this is kind of the last note to this, oftentimes in some other entrepreneurial industries, we always talk about product to market fit. I think mortgage brokers are kind of in the best situation because we can look at the market and we can fit the product, right? So find the market that you're comfortable with, you understand, you can talk to, is your bread and butter, and then go look for the product. Like UWM's, Rocket, they've manufactured all the products that the market needs. But start where you're comfortable and then go find the product. So you're doing it the opposite way, right? You're fitting your product to the market.
Yeah, there's so many things where I was taking down a bunch of notes and then I now just have a bunch of scratches. But one thing, just to digress, TCPA is the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. So it just limits, and this goes back, it's like 25 years old, but and it's being revamped now. So it's being kind of brought current. And this will eliminate all those just auto calls that you get, nobody on the other end of the phone. So it's trying to provide some consumer protection across the board, and they're making a lot of changes. And one of the biggest changes, they now requires one-to-one consent. So when somebody goes and fills out something on LendingTree, they're going to need to know who is going to be calling. So it's going to shake up the world a little bit. However, all of these things, if you begin going out and becoming accountable and owning your own lead gen, I'm no longer pawning it off on somebody else, right? Like I've heard thousands of, this conversation. Oh, my LendingTree leads suck. Lower my bills. Like it's the lead provider's job to provide you good leads and sell them. And it's moving into a world where it's going to become your job to provide your own leads, good and or bad. Yeah. And right, you have to be accountable for that chunk of your business. The beautiful thing is when you become accountable and you own that chunk of your own business, you now have a commodity that you can go and sell. LeBron James is pretty good at basketball. He owns how tall he is, how fit he is, how well he can dunk. He can take and shop that to anywhere he goes. He's not sitting around waiting for somebody else to do it for him. So be LeBron James, right? You have to look at marketing as a necessary part of this. And Bill talked about coming up with like all of these niche programs. And really, I mean, like look at the niche program and then speak directly to that person. You got a great first-time home buyer program. Let's say they're inside of some area where there's additional down payment assistance or whatever it may be. Target into that area. There's a lot of MSAs, which are just these little pockets throughout the country where there's extra money for down payment because you live in a particular area. Yep. So understand what's there and then start connecting the dots and just do a better job than most of the mortgage companies out there. Right? I say all the time, 50% of any businesses are below average. It is so easy to beat like 70 to 80% of the mortgage companies out there. They just got done posting the, Think Spring flyer. Like that's their idea of marketing. Think Spring. And, we now have this program. Like they're terrible at it. So you can go out and crush them, especially at a local level. And there's so many ways. I just spent last night, I was sitting here in this desk until about 2:30, recording this whole Niches in the Riches program. It's available on our website, but walks you through how to develop a niche program, how to reach out to agents. But there's just a lot of things out there that you can do and you really need to execute. And then one other thing that Bill mentioned is Age Leads. We've got a partnership with the Age Lead Store, and that's actually something that I did through Bill. If you want to do something with them, so they sell raw data across all 50 states. And if you're in Arizona, you can go in there in Arizona and say, I want to buy 100 leads and these are essentially people that put their hand up in the last, and Bill probably knows better, let's say the last 30 to 60 days, they put their hand up and said, I'm interested in a cash out refinance. And they sold that lead to somebody. You now are buying the data, so you know who they are, but you're not buying the lead. Yep. And from there, you can get those, right? They're $1, let's just say, right? Plus or minus, a few cents. And it does a couple of things. And I'm going to ask Bill next about email campaigns and how you would go about attracting and reaching out to them. But just very critical, any lead that you buy, make sure, and this is where a lot of people fail on leads, it's easy to buy the lead. It's very easy for a salesperson to call it once or twice. Where you make your money on any lead buy program is not the leads that you write that convert right away on the first day. It's what percentage of the leads convert after day 3, 4, 5, and 6. If you can pick up 1 or 2% conversion on something over the next 30 days, that's where all the money's made. The conversions on day 1 cover the cost of the program, and just making sure that your CRM, those things that you're doing are buttoned up. And it's where most people fail. And it's where they fail on SEO. It's where, regardless, they fail, and that they fail at following up. Your lead gen guy is not the problem. We like to point the finger at the marketing guy. He's doing his job, getting the phone to ring or getting you the name. Your job is to now follow up and sell that. So with that, Bill, I know you've got, tons of templates and email things and, 30 email scripts. Like you've got it all out there for people to use. It's like Gumroad, like there's all kinds of places. Yeah. What are your thoughts on like the critical must-haves for somebody that buys a lead today? They bring it into their system. What's the must-haves that they need to do, let's say over the next 30 days to ensure that they're going to, actually convert some of them? It's not just going to be a, money pit.
Right. So I would say, a 10x improvement on what you're doing, or like 80% of winning the deal happens with 3 initial steps that I always give away for free to people. So if you're getting a real-time lead in any context, whether it's from a lead provider, you're generating it yourself, you want to do these 3 steps in this order, right? If you have consent, right? So you've generated the lead and you have that one-to-one consent, you want to immediately send out a text message that's something of the flavor, hey, I got your inquiry. I'm taking a look at it. I'm going to give you a call in a few minutes, or give me a better time. That's the initial text message. I call that the Amazon effect. If you order something on Amazon, you will go somewhere else if you don't get a confirmation that they got your order, right? So that's the confirmation that you got the order. That will stop the shop, right? They understand someone's taken a look at their information. They got a response. They know the form worked. They made, and that sort of thing. The second one, and again, these should both be automated, assuming that you have consent. The second one is an immediate automated email. And that email says essentially the same thing. I got your information, but here's all of my contact information. Save this email. So those two steps should happen instantly and should happen with automation, because loan officers do a lot of other things. You could be knee deep in a deal. You could be trying to save something. You could be yelling at a processor for screwing something up, right? You may not be able to make that immediate phone call, but you've essentially created that immediate experience for that customer. So they feel like they're being handled, and they don't have anything to worry about. And then if they give you a time, which a lot of them will respond to that text message, and they'll say, hey, call me this evening or call me this afternoon when I'm free. And that will give them a more, comfortable experience. And also they feel like they're in control, which is okay. Like we always talk about control in the sales process. I think this is a good time to give that customer control, and then make the phone call. Right? In the next 20 minutes or so, if you don't get any sort of confirmation or a better time or a scheduled appointment, go ahead in the next 20 minutes, make that phone call so that you actually, and this is really important, I teach this all the time. If you make a promise, make sure you make good on the promise. If you say, I'm going to call you in a few minutes, call them in a few minutes, right? So then you can make that call. What's helpful about having that text and email come into, because everything happens through the mobile phone. 80 to 90% of our leads we know are filled out on a mobile phone. And so by sending that text message and email, your mobile phone, you've probably seen this, when you make that phone call now, it's going to say, this is probably John, right? This is probably Bill, because the phone has that information. So now you're not an unknown caller. You're not a telemarketer lightly because you're a high volume. So because you put that data into their phone, now that phone is going to sort of guess who that is, and that phone call is going to complete, right? So then it's probably going to be a voicemail. So I make sure that you're already ready with a voicemail script, right? Because what is that voicemail? It's not a voicemail. Think of it as a text message, because it's going to come through that lock screen and it's going to be transcribed. No one listens to their voicemail anymore. They're going to read it. So make sure you have a script and you're articulate, right? You deliver that with good enunciation. You articulate well so that gets transcribed nice and clean when it comes through and they know who it is. And then you're off to the races, right? Then after that, you want to build out some of these follow-ups. And I talk about putting things into statuses, which you move manually, and then having email sequences that trigger off the statuses to give you that long-term sort of natural looking follow-up. And we can kind of dig deeper into that. But if you do those 3 steps, you will increase your contact conversion like astronomically. And nobody does it. Everybody's just like pounding the phones. And those 3 steps will get you, so much better performance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of the double order stuff all the time, because I wait and like I didn't get the confirmation. I ordered again, and then lo and behold, bing, bing, you get 2. Like, oh crap, I just ordered the same thing twice. So that's big. And then that just clicked for me now, right? I haven't listened to a voicemail in years, but I never thought of when leaving a voicemail that I'm actually leaving a text.
Yep.
I never really connected it. I knew that it happened. So that's a powerful takeaway. So they do that. And then you really want to make sure CRMs today have come so far. It used to be something that if I go back when I was still writing loans back early 2000s, we had a thing called, I think it was called ACT. We had an ACT database and it synced up with my Palm Pilot, like it was just a different world. And, today, like the CRMs, they're relatively inexpensive. There are so many different options out there. And some of them will allow you to leave, video. Some of them they do a lot of different things. So when you're looking at your CRM or you're going to select one, what I tell people is there's a lot of good ones. Make sure you select one that you understand how it works, that you're able to go in and do it. But keep in mind, you're not, especially if you're a small company, you don't have the $75,000 a year guy that's plugging it all in for you. You've got to do this. So what does it come out with? How easy is it to operate? And then make sure that you've got at least the basics in there, that you're, reaching out to these people at a consistent milestones. And then actually you've just got to make the call. Sometimes it's just doing the work.
Yep. Oh, totally. Yeah. I give similar advice on CRMs because I have some preferences for sure and recommendations we make, but I think you hit on it you want to find a CRM that makes sense to you, that you're going to use, and then you want to dig into that CRM and give it a really good, solid chance. Like, learn how to use it once you've made that selection. Do the extra work to kind of really leverage it. You don't have to use all the bells and whistles, but make sure that you understand that it's comfortable, it makes sense to you, and then use it. And then the other thing, and almost all of them do this, but please look for this, because it's again, it's really going to enhance your success level, is make sure that it does a seamless sync with your Gmail or your Outlook or whatever you're using with email, because you want to be able to bounce in and out of that. You may be working in your CRM and you want to work that lead there, but you want it to sync up with your Gmail or on your phone, because you could be out and about. You still want to be able to send email replies and have that be synced up inside of your CRM. So there's no reason for it not to sync with those primary platforms, but there are still a few that don't do that, and that's a huge disadvantage. So make sure that feature's there.
Yeah. And what I see from a lot of people, and they have problems scaling. I can't tell you the sheer number of mortgage companies that I talk to, right? They're brokers. They launched in 2019. They got this false sense of how good they were because rates were at sub 3%. So they get these false positives. And now it's 4 years later and they're struggling. They can't figure out why. And often what it is, yeah, they've been in business for 4 years, but really they've been in business for 6 months, now 8 times. So they've never progressed past that. And if you look at a timeline, like if you have a child, by the time they're 1, like you hope that they can walk. And if they can't, right, they're behind the curve. And you hope that by the time they're 4, they're potty trained, right? I hope you're potty trained way sooner. But what we have in a lot of companies, you have the equivalent of a 12-year-old that's not potty trained. Because until you get your CRM and all that stuff dialed in, that should happen within your first 6 months. And it's one of those things you just have to take the time, right? Set aside 3 hours at night, like skip watching the draft today, put 8 hours into getting your CRM dialed in.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of things, you'll be able to attend the draft every year for the next, 20 years by the money you'll make.
Yeah.
But too often, right, we sacrifice the long term for the short term, but just
and I see this. I think that's really important, because I think this is a significant gap in the knowledge. So you can have an experienced loan officer, and probably if they've been in a big company, they've experienced one of 2 things, right? They've been inside of a Rocket or a Loan Depot, and literally they're just sitting there taking calls, right, all day long. Like they don't. And back in the day when we were at Quicken, this was different. But there is no CRM, right? You're just like responding to things. Things are fed to you, so you don't have those CRM type skills built. If you're at a sort of a classic traditional retail operation, you're being taught by like OGs that have tons of people, probably don't use a database, use their email and that sort of thing. So again, you may not have learned those database and CRM skills. Take the time to do that, because the people that are succeeding right now are harvesting their database, right? Thousands of people that are sitting in the database. Those are the people that are winning right now. So,
and if you are starting a brokerage, right, you're the CEO of a company of 1. You're also the chief marketing officer, chief sales officer, chief, you name it. You're the chief of everything. You're a C-suite of 1.
Yep.
And the standard you walk past is the standard you accept. So if today it's okay to do your business on Post-it notes, tomorrow it's also going to be okay. And then what you end up with is not a very scalable business. When you look at people that are self-employed, 90% of self-employed businesses never generate $1 million a year in revenue.
Right.
And only like less than 1% ever go over 10 million. And it's that they get caught up in the rat race of being self-employed instead of taking the time to put those systems and processes in place. So I think it's critical. One of the biggest things that I do with people is I just hold them accountable to executing on the stuff they already know they need to do.
Yeah.
Right. Like, where's your database? What's going on? So it's just super critical. So Bill, we're like coming up on time a little bit here. I wanted to ask you, if you were to go out today, right? Like all of your other tentacles crushed and right? And you had to go out and start a mortgage company. Bill, the only option for you is to start a new mortgage company and go out and, right, that's how you're going to feed your family. What would be those first things that you would do? And like, just walk me through what your first 90 days look like.
Yeah. So we actually have, it's funny because I think in the same terms, and I wrote an ebook. It's probably old now, but I think it still applies, which is the 90-day mortgage marketing plan. And so this is probably what I would, well, I know exactly what I would do. So I'd stand up the website, for sure. This would apply to me. It might not apply to everybody. I'm super comfortable with content, and I understand the loan programs and the audience. I've always been fascinated by the audience that I serve. So I understand. I've gone deep. I understand real estate investors. I understand, the different types of people that I would sell loans to. So I would start to write content specific to that, and I have some SEO skills. So I would look and use some of those tools to kind of figure out where those search demand is. So I would write content, even if you're not perfect at it. If you're writing content around pain points, so scenarios that people are trying to solve for. I'm trying to buy a home. I'm trying to there's all kinds of funny ones there. I'm looking for down payment assistance. I'm trying to cash out a spouse. We see this in private lending and stuff like that. So anyway, I would write some content to give me a base and to get Google sort of thinking about me. I would definitely have loan program pages that I've written to talk about the benefits of that. Even if I'm using UWM or Rocket, I wouldn't rely on theirs. I would actually write pages about that, and I'll get some unique stuff there. I'm a big believer in the database. So if I don't have a database, most loan officers starting their own broker business will actually have some semblance of past clients. But if you don't have that, then I would acquire, and this is important from a compliance and a TCPA, I would acquire, and you talked about this, consumer intent data, right? So sometimes it used to go under the moniker of age leads, but people mischaracterize that as having consent to contact. So, but I do want that intent, right? So if I can acquire consumer data where I know that person has been interested in purchasing a home or refinancing in the past, I'm going to go ahead and acquire that data, and I'm going to put it in my database. And then I'm going to be very diligent and careful in how I contact them. So I'm going to send them mail. I'm going to use email to then. The key to success in that too is, I always say, be a good human. So I'm going to write that first email personally. So that'll avoid, any sort of TCPA thing. I want to write a personal email to them. I want to look at their information, write that email. Again, this is not something that will scale. And then from then I can take on some automation. But I want to write a personal email to them. I want to do some direct mail to them, and get that initial energy inside of my database going, and then kick in some automation as I start to sort of build the pipeline. And then from there, probably the next step I would take, because I'm not very good at social media, like Facebook is not my thing and stuff like that. I would probably then move over to Google Ads. Right, because you can put together a marketing budget, and this is where you would probably go out to an agency and have them help you, because you do need, PPC has become more and more challenging. I couldn't run a Google Ads campaign, and I run an agency that provides that service. It's got more complex, so I would hire a PPC manager to run those campaigns. And for about the cost of my commission on one loan, I can run a pretty substantial PPC campaign that'll generate 20 to 30 leads for me a month. So that would be my second tier. After I'd kind of done that database work, got that baseline on my website, then I would go after some PPC and get 20 to 30 leads a month on top of that. And that's where I would start. And then again, my community, right? I live in a small community, and most of us do. Probably our kind of circle of influence. Like, I'm talking to all the volleyball parents. I'm talking to all the little league parents. I'm talking to everybody at my church, and I'm telling them that, hey, I do mortgages. Like, this is what I do. So many people know us for years and don't actually know what we do for work. That, as a mortgage broker, that's not good.
Yeah.
So
No, I think that's great advice. And one of the things, you have two kind of things that you're trying to conquer, right? Like, one is driving some deals today, right? You need to start closing loans to begin making revenue to continue to fund this. And that's where your sphere of influence, friends, family, those kind of people come in to feed the machine today. And then another long-term thing, especially if you don't have a database, is you want to, at the end of a year, you want to have, 5,000 people in your database now. And whether that be that you're buying 500 names a month and you're going to do that, over the course of a year, but you've got to get to a point where you've got this large database that every month you can hit a button and you distribute a massive amount of things to people, because you never know who's in the market at what time. You just want to be there when they are in the market. And a very small percentage of people are in the market right now to do a mortgage. So you just need a very holistic approach. And it is the biggest problem that I see anybody in our space have today. They don't have enough people to talk to.
Yep.
They understand mortgages inside and out, right? They've done 20 years of doing it. But if you don't have anybody to talk to, it doesn't matter how much you know. So a lot of what I do in the conversations I have is, how do we get business coming into you? And with marketing, lots of things work, but you've got to work your marketing.
Yep.
So just spending money doesn't do anything. You've got to work it on the back end. Well, this has been great, Bill. I think that if anybody doesn't, like I said before, go and follow Bill. He does most of his stuff on, you're most prevalent on LinkedIn. I mean, you're posting daily.
Yep.
Is daily a good, like, you out there every single day?
Yeah, I'm out there every single day, one way or another.
And beyond that, right, there's articles, there's e-newsletters, there's a bunch of stuff. And we're all a product of the people that we hang around with, the knowledge that you get from your kind of your friend group. And bring Bill into your circle, you will become a little bit better across the board, right? Like, you're going to take something away that's going to help you do more business. And then if you've got questions, concerns, anything for us, you're a banker that wants to become better, you're a broker that's struggling, trying to figure out, like, hey, what's my next thing? You name it, reach out. Love to have conversations. Everything in my world starts from a conversation, right? When I have a conversation, we can figure out a lot about each other. Maybe it works. Maybe there's a path to us working together. I have no idea, but I know at the end of the day, my number one goal is to add value back. If I can add enough value to enough people, like, at the end of the day, I will be taken care of, right? Like, I'm going to be okay. So that's my objective, my goal. Thank you guys for listening. I appreciate it. Bill, this is great. And thanks for all you do out there. You do give a lot of knowledge away, and you're helping people do better. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. We learn from the people, like you said. I love talking to people in this industry because there are some really smart people. And so most of what I'm saying here, I learned from mortgage brokers that teach me. So
yeah, no, it all goes back to the Bible, right? That was marketing 101 going way back. Right? You think about it, any of those books that have made it through time, it's marketing, it's word of mouth, it's referrals, it's sharing.
Yeah.
So
totally.
We got it dialed in. And so, are aliens real?
I have never personally seen one.
Okay. I knew you weren't going to give us the answer. He does have the details though. So he was in the Air Force, right? Like, okay, we'll leave it alone. I didn't know that you wanted to.
What I always tell people about that era of my life, it's always sexier on the outside than it was on the inside.
I think that that's with most things.
Yeah.
I think that's life just as a whole. Most of the things we do are not super glamorous.
Most of my days were mired in writing up ops plans and trying to get headquarters to approve shit. So it's the same old stuff.
Yeah. People ask me if I'm worried about, like, anybody looking, like, aren't you worried about people spying on you? Like, if somebody's spying on what I'm doing day in, day out, like, I actually feel I pity them because it is so freaking boring. Right. So, like, if you want to spy on me, go ahead.
I tell people I've worked we'll close with this. I've worked with the CIA, the NSA, FBI, and I can tell you there probably are no conspiracies because they couldn't even organize a good picnic. So it's tough to get things done in those organizations, especially cool shit.
Yeah, they're good at spending money. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, well, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much. You guys have a great day.